What up, motherfuckers? It's time to discuss the future of wrestling, right? I don't mean an individual per se, but I mean a new hero. This person can be in TNA, they can be in AEW, and they will obviously most likely be in WWE. But this needs to happen, you know? It's time. It's as simple as that. It is time. You know, WWE and wrestling in general needs a new Brock Lesnar. It's as simple as that. Now, I understand people are thinking, well, it takes a lot to be Brock Lesnar. Not really, motherfucks. Not really. You get some meathead that can do a lot of athletic things, and that's all you need. The rest will speak for itself. You know what I'm saying? Brock Lesnar was pretty good in the ring and always has been, you know. And then he continued to like reinvent himself by becoming UFC champion as a hobby. You know what I mean? And just beat the shit out of like pretty much as far as I'm concerned, Brock Lesnar exposed the UFC for the sham that it is. It's like they're not really like super athletes, right? Brock Lesnar goes in there. I understand he was a national college championship wrestler, right? But there's a lot of those. And not a lot of those become UFC champion. But because not a lot of them are Brock Lesnar, right? He goes in there as a hobby, right? Doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, right? Loses to Frank Mir via knee bar, right? Frank Mir, I understand people think he's like this Hall of Fame fighter, and he's all right. But he's a heavyweight fighter in the UFC, which means he's not very talented, right? Then Lesnar comes back, you know, straight up, beats the shit out of Frank Mir, just whoops his ass. Then he starts beating all these other undefeated jobbers, right? Then he fights Shane Carwin. Anyone remember Shane Carwin, motherfucks? Shane Carwin was this undefeated fighter who was knocking dudes out in like 1 minute or 2 minutes. He was like Francis Ngannou is today, you know? And like his full-time job was he was like an engineer, you know? He had like a real full-time job. And not like a simple one. He was an engineer, you know? And on his spare time, he was fighting in the UFC heavyweight division. UFC is a sport that you can do on your spare time. It's a sport that you can do casually and as a hobby. Proven by people like Shane Carwin and Brock Lesnar, who whooped his ass too. You know? Then he beat Randy Couture. He beat all these people that really were not A-level athletes. Like, they're obviously like good enough to kick the shit out of random people, but they're not A-level athletes. You know? And the UFC to this day has very few A-level athletes. You know? So, I understand that Brock Lesnar did all that, but that's not as impressive as people think, as I just said, motherfucks. And more importantly, you can take another person, like let's say, I mean, I'm not trying to say that Wardlow is going to be the next Lesnar, but you could have taken Wardlow and made him into a Lesnar. You could have taken Jack Swagger when they had the chance. I think they almost did, you know, and make Jack Swagger the next Brock Lesnar, except he doesn't have the physique really, you know, even though he is like just as qualified basically as Brock Lesnar. He's almost there, you know. So the facts are what the facts are, right? You need a new hero. Now, it doesn't even have to be like a Brock Lesnar type. It can be like someone the size of The Rock, right? It could be someone the size of Austin, right? Or Triple H. Or the person can fit any kind of parameters that you want, right? But what you need is a new guy to bring in, right? And you bring him in a similar fashion to how Lesnar was brought in, right? Not even how Batista or Cena were brought in, but how Lesnar was brought in. Brought in as the next big thing. Like as really the next big thing that follows through. Give them a LeBron James style career, right? You know, every once in a while, we get an athlete that's just like blown so high, so hyped that we're like, is this guy going to live up to it, right? So like Ronaldo is one. LeBron is another one. Erling Haaland for Dortmund is another one now. Mbappe after yesterday, you know what I'm saying? Mbappe's been one for like a few years, and he's thus far following through, right? There's a few athletes in different sports where it's like, holy shit, this person could be the best ever, you know? And they're presented as that. Like LeBron was presented when he was signed, when he was in high school. They're like, this guy might be the best player of all time, you know? Keep watching, motherfucks. He might be the GOAT, you know? And his career has demonstrated that the people that said that were correct. You know what I'm saying? But there's also a lot of people that get this moniker and fail. Like the 14-year-old soccer phenom, Freddie Adu. Remember him, motherfucks? So the point I'm trying to make is this. You take someone, and because wrestling is fake, the greatest advantage you have is you don't need this person to be the next LeBron. You need to make him look like the next LeBron, right? So you get a guy, and you're like, now this person is going to just go and win every match for like 2 years. Simple as that. Do what you did to Asuka, right? Except don't derail their momentum, right? Have a simple storyline. The day after WrestleMania, new guy debuts. New guy wins his first match, and has like a generic gimmick for now. He just wins his first match, decidedly, right? He hits a cool finisher and pins the person that he's wrestling, right? Then he wins matches for 4 or 5 weeks. After that, put him in like a battle royal, he wins that. Then you start talking about how this motherfucker's undefeated. Then eventually you have him feud mid-carders. You don't give him the mid-card belt. That's for jobbers. Brock Lesnar was never Intercontinental Champion, right? So you have a fight in the mid-card for a while. Mid-card doesn't fight for the belts, but he's having meaningful feuds in the mid-card. This has to be someone that's obviously appealing and people want to watch, right? You have this person dominate everyone, and then what happens? Then this person fights and beats a main eventer. You know what I'm saying? Not for the title, but beats, like let's say Drew McIntyre drops the belt. This person goes and beats Drew McIntyre clean. Like no problem, he just beats him clean and relatively easy. Like he beats him in like an 8-minute match, right? Drew McIntyre goes for the Claymore, this guy kicks out at 1, picks him up, does his version of the F5, wins the match. Something like that. That would be cool. Then eventually, you build him up to the Royal Rumble and you have him win the Rumble. Simple as that, motherfucks. And then he goes to WrestleMania, main events, and wins the title. The end. There it is. You have a new star. You have a new star. In 1 year, you can make a new megastar. You have him be undefeated for the entire year. You might have him lose once or maybe twice to the person he's going to wrestle at WrestleMania. And you have a star. Now, the problem with this is WWE is afraid that this person will then in a few years leave, right? First of all, that's not necessarily true, because here you have Triple H, you have Undertaker, you have plenty of people that didn't leave. And more importantly, who cares if they leave? Who gives a flying fuck? Becky Lynch left, Ronda Rousey left, people are going to leave. But what is better? To have Becky Lynch where she was at for a couple of years, or to have Naomi for 8 years? What's better? What's more worthwhile, right? Who has generated more money? Becky Lynch in like the 5-6 months where she was on top, or Naomi her entire career? The answer is Becky Lynch in one of those weeks. Not even a month. In one of those weeks, she generated more money than Naomi, right? So what the fuck's the point? If you want to have a bunch of Naomis and a bunch of Lanas, then go ahead, be my guest, But you want real stars. You need someone to become a mainstream name at one point. If they leave for Hollywood, that's even better, motherfucks, because people don't want to say it, but The Rock opened doors for Cena, He opened doors for Cena. The Rock came back and put Cena over. The Rock did a really good thing for the WWE, especially considering that he didn't need to. He didn't need to do anything for these motherfuckers, but he came back and he put Cena over and gave Cena, obviously, the victory of his career at WrestleMania, the one that I went to, motherfucks. He gave him the victory. He beat The Rock at WrestleMania for the title in the main event. The end. That's all you need to do. It's done. And then John Cena can give this new person the same rub, like next year or something, if they do this. This is the only way out. WWE instead is focusing on trying to make multiple mid-level stars, and it's not working out. Drew McIntyre is the closest thing to what I just said, right? Except for the fact that he had to first go through the mandatory association with Dolph Ziggler that every NXT person has. Either they team with this motherfucker or they wrestle against Dolph Ziggler the first month and a half from their NXT push, right? I'm surprised Keith Lee and Matt Riddle didn't do it. I think it's because Ziggler's on the other show. Otherwise they would do it. It would be like Matt Riddle versus Ziggler every week. So there you have it, right? Drew McIntyre almost had this, except for the fact that, number one, he had the Dolph Ziggler mandatory period, and two, he had all these other shitty storylines where he was like the third guy on the team, right? And also, more importantly, you can't ignore the fact that Drew McIntyre and Ziggler are just jobbers. Like, they've been jobbers for so long that it's hard. It's still hard to this day to take Drew McIntyre seriously as a main eventer, because it's like a few years ago, he was getting his ass beat in 3MB. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of take this a little bit more seriously, and it has to be a guy that no one's ever heard of. It has to be a guy like find the person, who was yet to debut on TV and that you didn't get from CZW or some other horseshit, right? Find the person that is like that's why I keep singing the praises of Wardlow. Wardlow is one of the few wrestlers who is, number one, awesome, and two, no one knows who he is, right? Nobody knows who the fuck Wardlow is. Like, if I asked everybody what company did Wardlow wrestle for last, no one would know. They'd be like, I don't fucking know. Who the fuck knows? And that's all you need, is a guy to be like, this is our guy. This is our guy, motherfucks. He came from nothing, but he is talented, and he will prove it, You don't need to associate him with dumb shit like Paul Heyman. They try to do this, they try to fast track this, right? Like, they always put someone with Paul Heyman when they don't want to go all in on this person, It's a risk. You're going all in, but it has to happen. It's really that simple. It has to happen. Because one Brock Lesnar, right? And look at Brock Lesnar. You know, look, he left, but he came back. The Rock left and he came back to bring more money to the table. You know, Cena left, but he put in like 15 years. You know, Batista left, he comes back too. You know, people come back, and they will, like, you at least have someone to bring back. Who are you going to bring back? Who are you going to bring back? Dolph Ziggler's back to feud with, like, whatever, some jabron in 10 years? Nobody cares. So that's what I'm getting at, motherfuckers. WWE needs a new Brock Lesnar. Wrestling needs a new Brock Lesnar. We all need someone like that. Someone that just gets like a rocket ship strapped to his ass and just gets shot to the moon. And you watch and you think to yourself, wow, someone we can actually talk about, right? This person will invariably cause people of different kinds of wrestling fan ilk to develop a polarized opinion on this person, right? That's what's going to happen, you know? Some people are going to be like, oh, this guy sucks, this guy's horrible. And then some are going to be like, this guy is awesome. Finally, someone good, right? You could have done this. They could have done this. Honestly, the only person they could have done this with recently is Lashley. I understand Lashley came from like TNA and shit like that. But like, you know, Lashley was pretty much undefeated almost in WWE when he was around the first time. He was being presented as the next Cena, you know? In MMA, he has a really good record. And in TNA, he also was like a multiple-time champion. So it's like, he's right there. You know, you can prime him up as like a legit #1 contender, as a legit monster. You know, it has to be someone like that. Preferably a big, strong person, not some sissy. But even a sissy will do. It's too late for that shit, you know? It's too late to make these little adjustments. If it's a sissy, it's a sissy. Get him on board. We need a new star. WWE has never been in this much need for a star ever. Ever, motherfucks. Like the #1 star right now, aside from the fact that Edge is back and he gets that boost because he's back, Edge and Orton are the only 2 stars in this company. And Orton, even though he is one of the greats, Orton was never, ever, ever the #1 guy in WWE. And quite honestly, neither was Edge. Edge and Orton were never the #1 guy. You know, they weren't even the #2 guy. Edge and Orton, if we're being honest, were the kind of guys that when you have nothing to do with them, you put them together in a tag team, and they're a tag team now. You know? So let's call it like it is. You know, you're not going to do that. You're not going to have John Cena and Stone Cold form a tag team. You know, you're not going to have that, right? So there you have it, you know what I mean? And if you do, it's going to be like a 2-week type of thing. So there you go. WWE needs a star. All their stars have left for a variety of reasons, or they have retired. So there you go. We need a star, and we need to make some good wrestling happen, motherfucks. And this can only be done when there is a reason to tune in. Someone being pushed every week is a reason to tune in. Look at Goldberg. You know, I talk about Goldberg's presence and physical charisma quite a lot. But let's be real. The real mystique of Goldberg is not even the way he looks or the way he wrestles. It's the fact that he came out there every week and kicked ass and won. That's what people want to see. Because when you start winning, when you start beating Crash Holly, right? Then next you beat Hurricane Helms. Or better yet today, if you start beating Davari, right? Then you beat, I don't know, fucking Santos Escobar, right? The question becomes, but can you beat Adam Cole? And then you beat Adam Cole. And the question is, well, can you beat, I don't know, Randy Orton, right? And then it's like, holy shit, you beat Randy Orton too. Can you win the Rumble? You know, these questions are what make people watch. Because you're like, oh shit, the guy that's undefeated has entered the Rumble. Is he going to win? Is it going to be his year? And because it is so rare for someone to win the Royal Rumble their first year in, it is one of the few surefire ways to push someone to the moon. You take this person, and you have this person win the Rumble, main event, and win at WrestleMania. Just like Lesnar, the Lesnar formula. You have to once in a while employ this. You can't overkill it, but you have to employ it. You know, the fact that the Royal Rumble can be won by people like Randy Orton still, and Edge, and things like that just shows one thing. There are no new stars, and there is no hope for anyone new. This year they might get a pass, because Edge is Edge, and Edge is coming back after like a long time off, even if you count his return last year, right? This year might get a pass. Next year, it is imperative that, honestly, right after WrestleMania, They take someone and do this to them. If it has to be someone that came from NXT, let it be so, motherfuckers. Maybe Damian Priest, I don't know. Someone that just comes in and just starts beating ass and becomes champ. That's what we want to see. That's what wrestling needs, cucks. And with that, peace out, motherfuckers.